Hello, friends. Welcome to the Wake Up with Gratitude podcast. I'm your host, Julie Boyer, and today I am welcoming Chester Elton. Hi, Chester.
Hi, great to be with you, Julie.
I am so excited to have you on the podcast. Now, I'm going to share just a few things about Chester that are pretty important. First of all, he is someone who absolutely builds his business, his life, his way of being on gratitude. He is a multiple New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestselling author of books such as Anxiety at Work, Leading with Gratitude, and The Carrot Principle with his co-author and business partner, Adrian Gostick. He's also the host of the Anxiety at Work podcast. He is incredible. We connected through LinkedIn because he has this bi-weekly newsletter called The Gratitude Journal. And with over 125,000 people subscribed to this newsletter, myself included, I just love reading about the way that you're grateful. And just to mention a few of the ways that Chester has been recognized by his peers globally. So Global Gurus does a top 30 each year. And in 2021, he was named number 3 in leadership and number 4 in organizational culture. And just recently, an organization called People Hum, they're based out of Asia. He was named the number 2 HR influencer in the world, as well as the Thinkers 50 based out of London. He was named a top 50 mentor and coach in the world. So after that, Chester, so happy you're here. Welcome, my friend.
Yeah, thank you very much. A delight. And, you're on Vancouver Island. I grew up in West Vancouver, so we got that Canadian connection.
Yeah, that's so fun. And it was something I was like, I didn't ever saw that in your bio. So I'm glad we have that connection. And it's so much fun to connect with someone who really lives their life around gratitude. It's in everything you do. It shows up in all the work that you share, your personal life. I see you sharing things about your grandchildren. Like, it's so much fun to see this. And I'm really curious, have you always been someone who has been thinking in this way? Did you grow up in a home that led with gratitude?
Yes, I really incredibly lucky. Grew up in a ridiculously happy household. My father, John Dalton Elton, and my mom, Irene Tanner Elton. One of the great love stories of all time. They were married for 65 years. I'm the youngest of 5 boys. And my dad was just a happy guy. My mom, pushed us to do things that would bring joy and be of service to people. My mom, it was really interesting. I would wake up and there would be like these other kids in our house. And I wouldn't know why. I'd come to breakfast, and I'd say, now, look, I know I live here, and it's clear that you live here now too. So where did you come from? And what are you doing here? My mom just brought in people that just needed a helping hand. And it was really lovely. A life of service. My mom was always lending a helping hand, and my dad, just the happiest guy you'd ever meet. He just had a way of making people feel good about themselves. He always liked to be around my dad. So yeah, I grew up in a very gratitude centered home, and very blessed to be so.
That just makes me smile. For those that are not watching the video, I can't stop smiling when I hear this story, because to grow up at a different time than today, I mean, it was, obviously a very different time in the world, and to be in that kind of environment, to be brought up in that way, it's actually really beautiful to hear that, and love how it shaped, the person that you are today. Now, I mentioned in the introduction that you have a business partner, and you told me that he is also your best friend. So how did you start working with Adrian?
Yeah, great story. So my dad worked in radio. He was in radio stations, and he told us all. He says, boys, nothing happens in the world till somebody sells somebody something. So
Yeah.
we all went into sales, except for my older brother. He's a lawyer, and we don't talk about him as much. So we all went into like broadcast sales, or in some form or another, and so I was in sales, and I was in broadcasting and TV, and so I took a job with a recognition company out of Salt Lake City, Utah. So moved from Canada, went to university down in the States, and then got a job in Detroit. Then we moved to New York, got married, was having kids along the way. And I got an offer to work for a recognition company and to run a sales territory in New Jersey, Well, if you know New Jersey, it's kind of like the pharmaceutical capital of the world. We'd always joke you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a pharma company. And those were a lot of my companies, right? A lot of my customers. Well, I had this project with a consulting firm, and it was all about employee engagement. And part of that was a recognition component. So they did the consulting, and then I would supply the recognition programs and so on. Well, I said, hey, this is a great partnership. How do I learn more about your company? He said, oh, really easy. Look, here's a book written by our senior VP called the Employee Equation. And I thought, well, this is brilliant. So I called our CEO at the time. We had a good relationship. His name's Ken Murdoch. And I said, Ken, if we became the thought leaders in employee recognition, it would make my job so much easier, because as a thought leader, people would call you to get your advice. I wouldn't have to cold call. And we've got all this great data and all this great research, all these wonderful customers. We can tell their stories, make for a great book. Nobody has written the definitive book on employee recognition. And he goes, ooh, I like that idea. Well, go ahead, write the book. And I don't think you quite understand what I just said. I said, like, you should write the book, and then I would benefit from this book. And he said something that was absolutely life-changing, Julie. He said, you know what, Chester, you're a smart guy. Figure it out. And so I thought, okay, I've got these crushing quotas. I've got all these young kids. I don't really have a lot of time. I'll give it a shot. So for about a year, literally, I was, thinking about titles and chapters and what would we say and who would be good customers to spotlight, when he calls me back and he says, Chester, I've always liked that idea about a book. I've hired a writer. His name is Adrian Gostick. Introduce yourself at the annual sales meetings and write the book. So not only did he put out the challenge, he then facilitated a way for the book to happen. And Adrian grew up in Canada. I grew up in Canada. We had that hockey thing, in common. Mm-hmm. And a year after that, we dropped a book on his desk. We had the cover designed and everything, called Managing with Carrots. And that was the first we just finished our 14th book together. We've been writing together now over 20 years. We've written, 14 books. We sold I think 1.5 million copies. They're in 30 languages. And it all started with Ken Murdoch saying, hey, you're a smart guy, figure it out. And then facilitating a way to get it done. Isn't that interesting?
I love it. I love the way that life sometimes organizes itself in a way that allows you to choose to be successful and choose. You still have to do the work. There's still a book to write.
There's a lot of work, no question.
There's a lot of work. We say, you very glibly said, 14 books, 30 languages, all these things. And it's like, yes, and a pile of work. But there is something also very beautiful about the fact that you were introduced to the right partner at the right time that could help this dream to facilitate and come true. And it could have just been a one book thing, but it turned into really a career of doing things together. And that's exciting to me to hear that kind of business relationship, especially these days where people often go different places, different, a lot of changes, a lot of the word pivot, we hear that a lot. So to have this relationship for so many years with a partner, I adore that. And I have a feeling that it has something to do with the fact that if you're writing and leading about appreciation, I'm guessing that shows up in the relationships and how you work with people.
Oh, no question. I'm forever grateful to Kent, for creating the opportunity. And by the way, it wasn't like all of a sudden I stopped selling,
right,
and started writing books. We were multitasking, running sales territories, doing all kinds of fun stuff. And then it transitioned, because it got, the book started to do really well. And then people would say, well, I liked your book. You speak on your book, don't you? And I went, sure, that sounds like fun. And then we studied speakers and what was a good speech and what made it fun and what made it engaging. And so we started to speak, and then people would say, well, we loved your speech. You have training that goes with this, right? And we said, we could have training. That sounds like a great idea. And we knew we had friends at Franklin Covey and these different wonderful training companies. And so we said, how do you take a book and turn it into training? And they taught us how to do that. And so we built a training business around that. And then we actually left OC Tanner was the name of the company. We actually left OC Tanner. Leadership changed and priorities changed. And And so we chose to strike out on our own. We've been on our own now. I think we're in year 12 right now. And and people would say, "Gosh, we love the training. We've got executives that could benefit from your coaching."
Mm.
And we said, that's an interesting area. And so let's go study that. Let's go get certified in that. Let's develop a coaching philosophy around that. And so now one of the things that we just really enjoy is that one-on-one coaching leaders on how to create great places to work. And all through our work, and you'll love this, Julie, like we've become experts in culture and leadership and teams and so on. The red thread through all of that is we never saw a really healthy, engaged culture. We never saw really extraordinary leaders or really high functioning and productive teams that didn't have that red thread of gratitude. It just didn't exist. They cheered for each other. They supported each other. They created safe places for people to talk about really important things. And that those friendships and that theme of gratitude is there every time. Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, it's interesting because when I started this podcast, one of my goals was to connect with business leaders and entrepreneurs that had that thread of gratitude as a foundation for their business. Because I truly believe that when you build a business and you build it on a foundation of gratitude, it's much easier to succeed. If you start there, if you start with treating people with kindness and respect and appreciation, if you start with recognizing people for all their accomplishments and not just, blowing past, every milestone and just, okay, that happened, let's keep going. Because often in business, the goalpost is always moving. So it can be so easy to forget to celebrate and to recognize and to give thanks, especially in a corporate culture when there's a team working. How do we remember that this team is important? And I'm curious about that. Like, how did you come up with a way to share this kind of, because you started at a time where emotional intelligence and talking about things like gratitude at work and kindness and all these things, that wasn't really common yet. So how did you bring that topic in?
Great question. We really positioned gratitude as a key element to a healthy culture. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't, that gratitude's going to solve all your problems, although it kind of does, by the way. It really does. Yeah. The dirty little secret, right? Yeah. Is that if you looked at the elements of a really healthy culture, clear communication, we talk about engaging, enabling, and energizing your people. Well, the engagement piece, do I give my discretionary effort? Well, why would I do that? Well, I feel valued. I feel appreciated, right? Enabled, have you trained them and given them the tools to do their work and deliver on the values promise and the vision of the company? And then, how do you energize people? How do you make them believe what they do matters, that they make a difference? And of course, if you want to reinforce that behavior, when you see somebody who's really doing wonderful work, how do you energize them? Well, you recognize them. You remember to say what your mother told you when you were 4 years old, right? Remember to say thank you. Yeah. And so it all kind of plays together. Now, one of the things that's really gratifying about talking about a really healthy culture and great leaders and teams is what we call the ripple effect. We have, by the way, we have a database of over 1 million engagement surveys, right? We've got a motivators assessment that we have like 100,000 people have taken. So we've got all kinds of great data that we pull from. What is it that motivates people? What is it that engages? And what brings that emotional attachment to work? The why, not just what I do and how I do it. Why do I do it? Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to me that when you are happy and engaged at work, you're 150% more likely to be happy and engaged in your personal life. Mm. So one of our missions is to really help leaders understand that not only, yes, you've got to stay in business. Bottom line is, you need to make a profit. No mystery there. How do you get there, right? It's the soft skills that get you there. Hard skills are a must-have, right? I can check those boxes. If you really want to excel, you've got to be good at the soft skills. Soft skills are human skills. Nothing engages a human more than saying thank you for their work, being grateful for the time that they give you every day. And then to send them home happy. So the ripple effect is they treat their spouses better. They're more engaged with their kids. They contribute to their communities. Look, I've lived long enough. I love this line. I got it from a sermon that I was reading the other day. The guy says, I've lived long enough to remember when times were worse. Right? I remember, you think this is tough? Let me tell you, so I remember when it was a lot worse than this, right? This idea of, send people home happy. We've all had miserable jobs and we take that misery home. Well, let's take the happiness home. Let's reverse that. So I think there's a lot of responsibility on leaders for the whole person. And the pandemic has really shown a light on that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's not
absolutely.
just you showing up. It's how did you show up? Where did you show up from? How's your family? How's your health? How do you fit? How do we go forward? So there's a lot more of, my generation, check your personal life at the door. We call it work for a reason. You're here to work. Just buckle down, and that's one approach. It's not particularly a winning approach these days. And yet it's still fairly prevalent.
Yes, but it's people like you and Adrian that are doing this work that are helping to change that and to allow people to be human beings. Because wherever you are, there you are, right? Wherever you show up, there you are. So when you wrote the book Leading with Gratitude, because that's how I feel, it's like wherever I am, I show up. So am I personally, because gratitude is my brand, that's what I do, am I leading with gratitude? So your book Leading with Gratitude, was that written in mind for like the corporate leader or any kind of leadership role or personal leadership? I'm curious to see where that particular book came from.
Sure. All our work, really, we say, look, we're the manager's best friend.
Okay.
The thing is that leadership is, by definition, I think, everybody. It's you're leading your life, right? You're leading your customer, you're leading your team, and so on. So while it's very leadership focused, there's no question that it very easily translates to your whole team. We speak at conferences literally all over the world. Just got back from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and this week we're in Austin, Texas, Providence, Rhode Island, and we're doing virtual stuff. We did a virtual thing this morning for Duracell in London, and tomorrow morning, a construction company in Moscow. I mean, you're virtual now. The hybrid world, you can be in 3 continents in the same week, right? Is that it's a message that translates to everybody. Okay. Whether it's speaking to the leader or being a good coworker, a good teammate, a good colleague, whatever title you use for people that work for your organization, and really, leading with gratitude. The section of the book that I found the most engaging was the take it home. All these wonderful leaders that we studied, they all took it home. They didn't leave their best self at work. They translated it in showing up and happy to see their families, teaching their kids gratitude, teaching them how to serve, how to be kind. And that's been really gratifying. Does it work in the business setting? Absolutely. We get 1 million engagement surveys and case studies ad infinitum that'll prove the case in a business school sense, right? Mm-hmm. The thing that I love is that happy at work, happy in life, because we spend so much time at work. Isn't that a noble call for a leader?
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And I love that you're really sharing the message of other ways to be grateful and to express gratitude outside of those office doors. Tell me a little bit about your own personal gratitude project that you've been sharing on LinkedIn. So you have your own personal challenge that you've been doing.
Yeah. So, when the pandemic hit and everything shut down in March, and of course our business was, 90+% speaking at live conferences. So that went to zero in a matter of a heartbeat, So I thought, well, I'm just going to post on LinkedIn just a photo of something I'm grateful for every day. And I said, I'm going to do it for a year. This is when, we thought the pandemic was going to last at most,
yeah,
maybe through the summer. I mean, certainly by, Christmas, it would be over, 9 months. Who could imagine? Well, and then I kind of lost track as to when I actually started. So I've just made it a habit. So I'll post, I posted that I was at a conference. I posted my grandson licking the chocolate off the beaters, a sunset. I know you love sunrises and sunsets. We have a little place in upstate New York that's my sacred place. I know you're on Vancouver Island there. It's just spectacularly beautiful. We have a little place on a small lake in upstate New York. I love it because it's the Canadian Shield. I mean, I'm in Canada again. You know, you grew up outside Toronto, you get it. It's not, in fact, it's about as far from our little lake place to Toronto as it is from our lake place back home to New
Oh,
Jersey.
wow.
So it's kind of that mid,
Okay.
and to Montreal, actually. It's kind of this, you know, nexus point. And so, you know, those things that no matter how bad it gets, and it can get bad, and I'm not minimizing the impact that the pandemic has had on people and the losses, you know, the many lives that have been lost, and that there's always something to be grateful for. To know that you're learning and you're growing and you're developing, and that challenges can and crises can be turned into learning moments and a great opportunity. You know, when Adrian and I decided to leave the company where we worked, it was really it was a very difficult decision.
Yeah.
And heart wrenching because we loved the company. I worked at that company for 19 years. I loved that company with my heart and soul. It was just very obvious that we didn't fit there anymore. You know, there'd been a change in leadership, and they're all good leaders. You know, companies change direction, and that's okay. And that's okay. And you've got to change directions, and you've got to move on, and that's okay. It doesn't mean it's easy, or that
Right.
it's not going to be fraught with a lot of emotion and a lot of heartache. And that's kind of part of the package. The thing is you step back, and I had great advice from a friend of mine because I mean, we stepped out into the abyss, Julie. I mean, we had these great jobs. They were paying us well. We had expense accounts. We traveled. It was very safe. To like now, it got very real. It was eat what you kill, right? And a
What,
friend of mine,
how old are you around this time?
oh,
Your 40s or?
now it's yeah, I was right around 50.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That I'm just putting it into context because that is a big change at that time in your life to say, we're going to go do something on our own, rather than in your, late 30s.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know,
There's a big difference in the trajectory of your life when you're in your, early 50s versus in your early 30s. So that is just to put it into context of how much harder that change would have been at that time.
yeah, and this is right around the time, by the way, they were all these age discrimination suits and stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, that could be me, you know.
Yeah,
Uh, and
for real.
there is that moment when you realize that there's less in front of you than there is behind you,
Mhm.
you know, and time gets a little more precious. Where are you going to spend it? So that was an interesting transition, and great advice I got from a friend of mine. He said, "Enjoy the journey." And I thought, well, what's there to enjoy? I'm under an immense amount of stress. You know, I still have a mortgage. I've still got kids, and university to pay for. And he said, "Yeah, but think about all the stuff you've done and where you are, and people are hiring you, and you're still traveling the world. And just every now and again, take a deep breath and look around and go, this is amazing." I mean, seriously, if I went to Hillside High School in West Vancouver, if anybody in my English class had said, which one of you here is going to be a New York Times bestselling author? Trust me, I would not be in the top 30. And there were only 28 kids in the class. So
Yeah.
it's been a wild ride. It's been a wonderful ride. By the way, to explain that to if anybody from Hillside High class of 78 is watching this show, or 76 actually, is Adrian's the writer. And then they go, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Yeah, your partner's the writer. I go, yeah, oh, okay. Now it's believable, you know. So it's been a wonderful partnership. And you think, partnerships that have lasted more than 20 years, there's not a lot of them.
No, not even forget about romantic partners. I mean, business partners, partnerships of greater than 20 years. It's pretty incredible to have that. And that you're still happy working together. That's the other thing,
Yeah,
right? There's joy in the work that you're doing.
Yes, and we've got another project that we've got on the board for our next book, and we're very excited about it. And I think one of the keys to our success is I live just outside New York City in Summit, New Jersey, and Adrian lives in Park City, Utah. So we're about 2,000 miles apart, and I think that's helped.
Absolutely.
We don't see each other too much, you know what I mean?
Well, especially in the past couple of years, it's definitely been less.
Oh.
Absolutely. I wanted to get back to something that you mentioned because I was curious around, because you do, I mean, coaching is a part of who you are, your DNA. That's a big part of what you're doing. How do you coach people around loss and gratitude? Because it has been, for a lot of people, there have been a lot of losses. I mean, you even said yourself, your own business went from, 90% traveling, speaking to zero. That's a massive loss. And I'm just wondering how you help people cope with these kind of losses that they've been to and how gratitude can help them.
Such a wonderful question, and it's not easy, right? Because we're wired to protect ourselves, and when anything goes wrong, we jump to how do I protect myself, rather than what's the opportunity. And so it is hard to all of a sudden say, okay, so here's where we are. Some of the greatest companies came out of the recessions, right? Microsoft and Apple really took off, in recessions. I mean, think about what happened to Amazon. Oh my gosh! I mean, Amazon tripled in value, quadrupled in value during the pandemic. So there's always a way forward, and gratitude, I think, can be very much a balm for that, and say, look, no matter how bad it gets, we're not boiling our shoes, to get the gluten out of the leather to sustain ourselves. I mean, literally, there have been times that have been a lot worse than what we've gone through, although this is our crisis. And so it's maybe the worst that we've been through, is to take a look and say, what are we learning? Where are the opportunities? Where can I be of value? Where can I be of service? Let's see what we've got. What are we grateful for? What can we build on? And like I said, look, it's easy to say. It doesn't mean that it's not hard. Anything worth doing is generally speaking hard, right? So we went through the denial like everybody else. Said, 2-3 months, they'll figure it out and we'll flatten the curve. Remember that? We'll be fine. And of course, then it didn't. The curve didn't flatten. And so that kind of stuff, I think is really takes you back to, well, what do you value?
Yeah.
What are you really made of? Who are the people around you? Are they the kind of people that build you up and support you and rally to the cause? And I'm kind of talking in a lot of platitudes here, but the idea is that, look, there's no mistake. I look around and say, as bad as things can get for me, 99% of the world would trade places with me in a heartbeat. I'm not worried about my next meal. I'm not worried about walking out of my door and getting shot. I'm not worried about a civil war. So those are things to all be grateful for. And you say, okay, well, that's kind of the bare minimum. You say, well, yeah, build on that.
Yeah.
Build on that.
It's interesting because that's a lot of the ways that I help people to practice gratitude is I focus on a lot of simple things. So reminding people that just turning on your tap and having drinking water is a place to start with gratefulness, because that is millions of people will never, ever have that. There's just access to clean drinking water from all your taps, your shower, your toilet. It's a simple thing. And what's interesting is it's not that my life is harder or better or, than yours or whatnot. It's looking for ways within our own place, where we live, finding the tiniest things that we can have gratitude for, knowing that, we often take so much of it for granted. So even in the hardest moments, just pausing for a moment. And, so many people have this, the phone, right? Like, what if you have a phone and access to the internet, what you can do with that device, you can change the world with your internet and your phone.
Yeah, well, and just over your shoulder there, the beauty of nature, the gift of nature. Yeah. I'm convinced that a lot of spirituality in the world has ebbed because so many people live in cities where you've got light pollution and noise pollution, and you don't get that chance to commune with nature as much as you should. I mean, you're so blessed to live on Vancouver Island. I mean, you step out your door and you're in the middle of some of the most beautiful places on the planet. The Japanese have a tradition of forest bathing. They go just walk in the forest and just let nature just envelop you. And it's just so healthy and it's just so wonderful. I mean, how can you not be grateful for that? You know, so I really do believe that gratitude can be very much a healer. I've kept a gratitude journal for a few years now. And I try not to miss a day. I mean, there are days when I miss, travel and whatever, but the idea of just at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, just jotting down a few things that you're grateful for, I think is really a wonderful ritual and a practice that allows you to stay in that good, positive mental state.
I agree. I do the same. Been gratitude journal at night for over a decade, and morning practice has started about now 2.5 years ago. I agree. I call it the bookends of your day. It's the part of the day that you have the most control over. So then you choose how you act during that time. Chester, I have a couple more questions before we wrap things up. One is, I'm very curious about something you shared on LinkedIn that I have never seen before. And this is at the Rockefeller Center, a giving machine. Can you share what this is?
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's called Light the World. I grew up in a very spiritual family. We're devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, better known as the Mormons. And a few years ago, the church decided that they wanted to give back, a way to light the world. So they created these vending machines, and it just looks like a vending machine. The thing is, you know how you go to a vending machine, you put in your money and it gives you something.
Yes.
Well, this vending machine, you go in and you swipe your card and you give something. And it's really interesting. They've got global charities, water. You mentioned, the clean water in Africa. So there's some global charities, and then they always have local charities. So I think it's in like year 4 or 5. There are like 10 of these machines around the US. And this year they put one at Rockefeller Center. So we volunteer to man the machine. So my wife and I volunteered just a 2-hour, volunteer from 8 to 10 p.m. at Rockefeller Center. By the way, Rockefeller Center, come on. At Christmas time, it's magical.
Yeah. Just to be there, like,
yeah.
I've got to
2 hours at Rockefeller. Yeah, sure.
If I must.
I will sacrifice my time for that. So, and it was really funny. We'd bring people and they said, well, like, what is this? So, explain it to you. So there's, a foundation, the Mariano Rivera, he's a famous pitcher for the New York Yankees, and he's got a foundation to clothe and feed the homeless and the hungry. Well, for $5, you can give a pair of mittens.
Right.
And I'll tell you what's so fun, Julie, is so you select the number, 285, mittens, $5, swipe your card. And then like a vending machine, it comes up and it drops and you feel, ah! No, you don't get it. It just drops in the machine, right? And then we go, and here's your sticker.
Aw.
We go, and it makes people feel so good. Now, the great thing about my church is we cover all the administrative costs. So that $5 goes to buy those mittens, to get those mittens to the Mariano Rivera Foundation. And you can give, like, one of my favorites is chickens. It was very popular. You can give 2 chickens to a family so that they can, get eggs and so on. A goat is a good one. So, and then in New York, there was a great a charity for actors that were put out of work from the pandemic.
Yes.
And it was healthy meals, and it was masks, and it was, counseling, and just a lovely. Well, last year, I think they had 8 machines around the country. Raised over $6 million in donations.
From 8 machines? Wow.
And see, here's where gratitude comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you get the news feed on your phone, you spend an hour on the news feed, you think, well, I should just kill myself. I mean, there's no, you don't go to your news feed to get cheered up, right? Then you go to these giving machines and you see all these little cards with all these mittens and chickens and it's piled high. And you go, you know what? There was a good person that did that. There's good people everywhere. Yeah. And we should be grateful for the goodness that we find in everybody, whether it's, $5 for mittens or $25 for chickens or whatever it is. When you ask people to give and to help out that are less fortunate, they do. And I'll tell you what's fascinating, Julie. Yeah, there are some people that come up and you can say, wow, they're very well to do. The people that give the most are the people that don't have a ton. because they know what it's like. They know what it's like to be without. And if they've got an extra $5, they're happy to give it to you. Isn't that lovely?
Yes, I love that. And I'm so glad you told me this story about it because I was very curious. I was like, this is incredible. What an initiative. And what I love about it too is if you're giving someone else a pair of mittens, or if you're giving someone else clean water, it allows you a moment of of pause that, oh, I already have these things. These are already available to me. And it gives an opportunity for gratitude in that moment as you're gifting. So I think too, gifting a specific thing often helps people to be more, willing to give because they know exactly what they're doing. And sometimes you feel like $5 isn't a lot, but if you know that you just bought someone some socks or some mittens, it's great. I'm so happy you shared that with us. What a wonderful
Yeah. And
way to
one
share
last thing on
that.
that, what really is lovely is when you see parents bring their kids in,
Mhm.
you go, oh, what should we give? And that ripple effect through their children, like, hey, we've got enough.
Yeah.
Let's give somebody mittens that doesn't have mittens. What do you think about that? And they light up. They just light up. Let's light the world. Lighttheworld.org. Go check it out. Lighttheworld.org. And you can give online. And why not?
Yes. And I love this episode's going to come out in January. And I think it's important to remember that giving is needed year round. We focus a lot of our giving efforts around the holidays, but there are people that need help and support and, our gratitude and our love all year round. So please, if you're watching this and it's, a different time of year, still check it out because somebody around the world needs those chickens to lay the eggs. I live
Exactly.
in a place where we can have chickens in our yard. So, but I understand like the value of a chicken, they don't cost a lot to feed and they do feed your family. So chickens is an amazing thing to donate.
Good for you. Good for you.
Awesome. Well, Chester, I've loved our time together. I want to ask, where is the best place for people to connect with you or find you on the web?
Yeah, so connect with me on LinkedIn. We post stuff literally every day. Our gratitude journal, which is wonderful. Yeah, we started that kind of on a whim, a recommendation from a friend, and we've got 126,000 subscribers. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Great articles. So LinkedIn is a great place to find me and Adrian and our work, our podcast, Anxiety at Work, number one issue in the workplace, 8 strategies on how to deal with anxiety. You'll love it. The 8th strategy is gratitude. Yeah. And our website, thecultureworks.com. We're big believers that when you get the culture right, everything else works really well. So it's thecultureworks.com. Our books are available everywhere. Leading with Gratitude is our favorite book. We published it right before the pandemic. And Anxiety at Work is our latest work, and we think probably our most important work. So I'd recommend those 2 books.
Thank you so much. So as we wrap things up, Chester, if you wanted to leave us with, if we were just to start one gratitude practice, one thing, what would that be for you?
Well, let me give you 2. One is one we've already talked about, which is a gratitude journal. I'm a big believer. My wife and I, we end every day by saying, what are your 3? What are 3 things you're grateful for? And it's often many more than 3, right? Mm-hmm. The second thing is a practice of just a random act of kindness every day. Just a random act of kindness. I've developed a really fun ritual. I carry with me, and you'll remember this from our last gratitude journal, a gratitude stone. Mm-hmm. And you can get them on Amazon. It's less than $1, right? It's just a river stone with gratitude etched on it. And when I see people doing just things that maybe nobody says thank you for it. The other day I was doing my meditation up by our park, and the guy was taking care of the grass. And I said to him, you know what? My name's Chester. What's your name? Dennis. Important to get names, right? It really personalizes people. I said, Dennis, I know that when people call you at City Works, it's always to complain about something. Nobody calls to tell you, by the way, the fields looked great today. Nobody does that. So I want to buck the trend, and I want to tell you, I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years, and you guys take great care of these fields. And I've got a little something for you, just to remember that all those little things you do don't go unnoticed. And it's a little gratitude stone just to express my gratitude. I got to tell you, Julie, you think I passed that guy a Fabergé egg. Yeah. And he goes, I'm going to put this on my desk. I'm going to remember this. And I said, you know what? If you want to have fun with it, pass it on. Pass it on. Little random acts of kindness, and memorialize it with just a little stone. It's a wonderful way to lead if you're leading in business. It's an even better way to just live.
Oh, Chester, that is a wonderful way to end our conversation. I have truly enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much for saying yes to being a guest on the podcast. I am so excited to share you with our audience of gratitude ambassadors and just truly appreciate the work that you're doing with Adrian. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. It's been a delight meeting you as well. And I envy where you live on Vancouver Island. What a beautiful place. You must be grateful.
I absolutely do not take for granted that this is where I get to wake up every single day. So thanks, Chester.
Take care.